Hi everyone, this is GGN. It's Monday, November 24th, 2014. You guys probably seen the news about the Defense Secretary Hagel stepping down. He was pretty much forced to step down or fired, and we'll get into a little bit of that in this video. So it says here he's stepping down amid criticism of the president's national security team on a series of global issues, including the threat posed by a militant group known as ISIS. So it goes on and says that the White House has lost confidence in Hagel to carry out his role at the Pentagon, according to a senior official saying that he wasn't up to the job. They said Hagel has been discussing a departure from the White House for several weeks, and one of the issues that's been discussed over the past several weeks actually was Syria and getting regime change going again with Assad. U.S. Defense Secretary Hagel resigns over apparent disagreements with White House, and his job was to bring major U.S. combat operations in Afghanistan to an end while managing a leaner Pentagon amidst those cuts. So he took the job to end the war, not start another one. Okay, and then the last thing I have for this, in recent events, however, including the rise of the so-called Islamic State group, also known as ISIS or ISIL, and the worldwide Ebola epidemic, required a different kind of focus. So that's basically why Obama shit-canned him, because of Ebola and ISIS. Both issues that I've mentioned in a video before are issues that have to deal with immigration. So if you want to solve the problem with ISIS or problem with Ebola, it usually has something to do with immigration. But they're not going to talk about that. It's too controversial. Something that InfoWars is covering, which is interesting, is this Hagel talking about a New World Order. He warned of a rogue New World Order, and now he's fired. He also cited war on terror blowback and criticized U.S. foreign policy. According to an account covered in the Washington Post, he said that we are at a time where there is a New World Order from Hagel to Obama. We don't control it, and you must question everything, every assumption, everything they, the military and diplomats, tell you. Any assumption 10 years old is out of date, and you need to question our role in it. You need to question the military, and you need to question what we're using the military for, he said. If you remember, Chuck Hagel actually was controversial because when he was coming in, there was this whole thing about him being an anti-Semite. So maybe the Zionists weren't sure whether he was going to play ball, and I imagine that's why he's getting shit-canned. And as far as Obama, the leader of the free world, I'm sure he's just getting pressure from, as they say, the military-industrial complex. That's the best term you can give it. But the military and neocons, Zionists, looking for a nice, good war that will, make a lot of money. But yeah, they made a big stink about it, and then in the end, it just was kind of laughable, the whole thing. But this is kind of similar to Robert Gates, he actually wrote a book in the last year that came out. He was really critical of the Obama administration and U.S. foreign policy. So it says here, for Robert Gates, caring for troops was job number one, and he'd actually stepped down too. Retired, and he said the toll on his psyche after serving as a wartime defense secretary during two bloody conflicts spanning two administrations seems more and more visible. But yeah, this pretty interesting. This guy actually signed personal letters to troops and their families. Also for getting better equipment and armor and stuff for troops. He publicly questioned the need to join the NATO air war in Libya, arguing that the military already was overstretched in Afghanistan and Iraq. Since then, he sought to limit the U.S. role. He emphasized that he would not hesitate to support sending troops to another conflict if national security were threatened, and he favors only modest reductions in troop levels in Afghanistan in coming months. That puts him at odds with the Obama regime, who wants to bring U.S. troops out sooner. Which is maybe why they brought in Hagel, right? But look at this. This is from yesterday. Afghans approved troop deal. U.S. already breaking it. The Afghan parliament today finally approved the troops deal, which will keep U.S. occupation forces on the ground through 2024 and beyond. The vote was 152 to 5 and loudly backed by President Ghani or Ghani. So initially it was for training and advisory. It says here that it also made several limits on things the U.S. troops couldn't do inside Afghanistan. So on Friday, it was revealed that Obama had already signed a secret order that would ignore the training advisory limit and ensure that U.S. ground troops remain in direct combat throughout at least 2015, the first year of the deal. And this Afghan government is basically going along with the plan. In fact, they say that he has quietly agreed to lift another of the limitations, the ban on night raids against civilian homes in Afghanistan beginning in 2015. They were hugely unpopular in rural Afghanistan, and I've covered this before, knocking down people's doors and stealing stuff. I guess it's a lot better than getting drone bombed in the middle of the night. Hagel departure will boost anti-Assad drive, talking about regime change. I think his departure, that those who are in favor of trying to remove Assad will gather strength and that we will see some shift in that direction in the near future. There's a former U.S. Senate foreign policy analyst. He said that the one primary shift may be the question of Syria. That's not entirely clearly the point, but it seems likely, especially given the confirmation process for a new secretary is going to look like in the basically in a Republican Senate. So they are getting ready to roll here. Several weeks ago, Hagel sent a memo to Obama suggesting that they need to clarify how they're going to look at the Assad regime. He was critical of the U.S. war in Afghanistan and Washington's strategy against the ISIL terrorist group, like arming and stuff like that, and training moderate rebel forces. So they've really created this situation, like he was talking about with Gates in Libya and that. Look at Libya now, and a lot of these fighters in Syria are not Syrian. A lot of them are battle-hardened from Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya, all U.S. foreign policy campaigns, which are probably, they're not failures, not blunders. They're most likely doing exactly what was planned by these think tanks. Obama's Syria strategy, see, they call it Obama's strategy. Again, it's probably not his strategy at all. It's probably the think tanks. I'm pretty sure it is because I've seen some of the reports on that with Iran and Syria. I mean, you all know about the Project for a New American Century, where neoconservatives, mostly being pushed by Israel to get Middle East in the situation that it's in, taking one out after another. Obama's Syria strategy focuses on ISIS and Assad government. This was from the 14th, so this is what we're talking about 10 days ago. He says that they reportedly ordered a review of America's strategy, one that could include the removal of Syria's President Assad, which was kind of the point of stirring all this shit up, like getting Gaddafi out of there, was to send in Al-Qaeda and them to get regime change, according to Brookings Institute policy for having Assad step down and basically isolating, putting the heat on Iran. Assad, he says that defeating terrorism requires confronting the Takfiri militants trend. That's what they call them out there. But he says, so this is after meeting with the Russians. He says routing terrorism requires putting actual pressure on parties and not just propaganda and grandstanding. Basically, he's taking a jab at Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and United States, Israel, for backing, funding, and arming these terrorists. And he was thanking Russia for respecting their independence and sovereignty. Muslim clerics meet in Iran to counter extremists, Shiites, and Sunnis from around 80 countries gathered in Iran to develop a strategy to combat extremists, including this Islamic State group. And the Western strategy is to basically pit these groups against each other. It's what they're always doing with Sunnis and Shias, is getting them to go to war with each other. Rand Paul demands Obama go to war with ISIS. So this is Rand Paul, your local libertarian, your good guy. I don't know, a lot of things that he said and he supports, it seems like he's not really like Ron Paul at all, so be wary of him. But he says that I will introduce a resolution to declare war against ISIS. I believe the president must come to Congress to begin a war that Congress has a duty to act. So right now this war is illegal until Congress acts pursuant. So he's saying, this war is illegal. We need to make it legal. I'm not against anything. We just need to legalize it. So I don't really trust Rand Paul. And as far as Ron Paul too, I'm not really sure if I really trust the guy either. He may have just been running to build this stuff up, build up a base for his son. Could run on a nice neoconservative platform. Iran nuclear talks have been extended through June of 2015. Not that exciting of a story. But it says here that it was agreed on for a pretty long time that they would hold off. It says that the talks have a secondary deadline in January when the new U.S. Senate takes power, as they intend to grant themselves veto power over any negotiations and are stacked with hawks opposed to the talks on general principle. So, analyst reveals that Tel Aviv considers that such an agreement would threaten Israel and Saudi Arabia's interests. They added that Israeli threats to strike Iran have fallen because of the nuclear talks, and that lastly, the Saudi attitude towards the nuclear agreement matches with the Israeli, as Riyadh is pressuring the Western countries in order to avoid such an outcome. And then you have this from November 18th, 2014. Saudi Arabia fears the Islamic State wants sectarian war inside Saudi Arabia. I've covered this year in one video about all this destabilization going into Saudi Arabia, and Israel, or the globalists, not really dumping Saudi Arabia, but allowing the Israeli expansion plan, the Greater Israel plan, to take place, which would include a large chunk of northern Saudi Arabia, among other places, other countries. Saudi Arabia sentenced 3 to death for joining Al Qaeda. This was recently as well, so they'll fund terrorism and all that, and they want this to happen. But when it comes into their own country, they don't want to have anything to do with it. And we covered this before. Biden says the Turks, Saudis, UAE funded and armed Al Qaeda. Not a big surprise. U.S. is going to buy arms for Sunni tribes in Anbar province. Sounds like a good idea, right? So they took down Saddam's regime and the Sunni power base that they were supporting, arming other people. Now they got to go after those people that they armed originally. Now they're going to arm the people who they originally took out after the people that they armed to take them out became radicalized and got out of control. Pentagon says not arming tribes would mean they wouldn't fight ISIS. A government document detailed plans that $1.6 billion of additional training and arming, as they put it, on the ISIS war. Includes a plan to buy AK-47s and RPGs to give the assorted Sunni tribes in Anbar province. Next up, fighters from Syrian al-Qaeda wing close on Shiite village. Members of al-Qaeda's al-Nusra Front and other Sunni Islamists seized an area south of a Shiite Muslim village in northern Syria on Sunday. Then, House Republicans want to work around Baghdad. They want to arm the Kurds, so it's just another thing. They want to arm the Kurds. November 20th, 2014. So they give the guys a bunch of weapons, and that's their foreign policy. And, we'll just drone bomb them in between. Kill a bunch of civilians, maybe, who knows. Then we'll run a nice natural gas pipeline. They call it energy, energy foreign policy? Energy diplomacy, that's what it is. That's what Hillary Clinton called it. And Putin calls it bomb democracy. The Mossad-backed Jundallah pledges support for ISIS. In a statement, this Islamist faction announced that it's pledging loyalty to ISIS and will back whatever plans they have going forward. In recent years, the group's attacks have mostly centered on Iran, and there's evidence that they've been backed by Israel's Mossad. They were originally basically an al-Qaeda ally, and then had a falling out in 2003. They started getting funding from what they claimed were CIA agents, and there was ample evidence at the time that that was the case. It turned out not to be the case, however. They were being funded in U.S. currency by men with U.S. passports who were actually Israeli spies, in what was seen as an attempt to frame the U.S. for backing of terror attacks inside Iran. And it says here that British mercenaries fighting ISIL are open to murder charges. Their ex-servicemen fighting ISIL in Syria are facing criminal investigations. I like this statement. The UK is trying to defeat ISIL, but freelancers are not acting on behalf of the UK. They may well be guilty of murder and other sorts of crimes, like they aren't. British Special Forces training Syria's rebels. This is from last year. Then British Special Forces, CIA, MI6 supporting armed insurgency around Syria. 2,000 British people are fighting for ISIL. They call them Britons. These are immigrants. They're Muslim extremists. And these same dumbasses who are for open immigration bitch and complain when they have jihadists, lone wolf terrorists in their own country. Then you have in Germany dozens of Germans killed fighting for ISIS. Again, are they Germans? No, they're not. Obama knows what's going on. He just tried passing a bill that would allow amnesty for 5 million illegal immigrants. This is GGN, and I'm Darko. Thank you.